So I saw a report just a few hours ago that an employee of one of these consulting firms has a goal to burn down the gaming industry. Now, if this is true, which again, we've heard some of the things that these so-called consultants have said in some of their interviews, we've kind of, gotten a sense of who they are, what they actually think, how they, perceive the gaming industry. And if this particular claim is true, in my opinion, I have no idea how to actually think through all of this because, again, the biggest thing is if you actually think about what it is that they are saying, they see gaming as some kind of an institution that, is oppressive at the end of the day. Now, I can understand maybe this might be someone who was a former disgruntled employee from a big development company or whatever it is. But it appears to me that they're taking out their grievances on the gamers themselves. Now, I get it. Gamers can be a tough bunch. However, one of the things about gaming that really does resonate with a lot of people is the fact that if you actually think about, the way we actually look at this particular hobby, it's something that most of us have actually engaged in since we were kids. It's not something that we just pretty much, all dreamed up today. We kind of, came here from a specific point in, say, our lives. And so this is something that we kind of hold as a fun place. We kind of hold it as a fun, enterprise at the end of the day. So a lot of what's going on right now is not only have these consultancy companies put themselves in a position where they're now they're now in the center of attention. They're now a target. I feel like they could have said nothing and nobody would have known anything. But the moment they started coming out and, trying to use dirty tactics, and that's a problem. Whenever you use dirty tactics, people start taking it personally. Like, how they try to maybe get people, deplatformed. They try to get people fired from their jobs. And at that point, it no longer was a conversation of we're just arguing ideas. It now became, okay, we're now going to actually push everybody as far away as possible from gaming as we possibly can. And so most of the creators that you see right now, they simply are on a mission. They're literally like, okay, we are going to now, continue down this path because Pandora's box has been opened. And I think another thing that I've seen too is a report that many of these companies are now starting to blacklist these consultancy firms. I've already made, a video in the past during the Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League time. And I said, these writers in the writing room, they never had a need for the consultancy firms. There was just no need for them to actually have them working on their games or even engaging in their titles. It was just not something that I would have thought that anybody would engage in that regard. But they decided that they were going to. And then it found out after all was said and done that these so-called consultancy firms had connections to people who had a lot of poor reputation within the gaming scene and the gaming conversation. So you put all that together, you can see how this is a poison in gaming. These are bad actors that have found their way into the gaming industry. And at the same time as they found their way into the gaming industry, are deciding to ruin the gaming industry because, again, the quiet part was just said out loud. This was not something where, you drew a conclusion from something that, you thought. This is something that has been said verbally by an individual that is affiliated with one of these companies and one of the most, I would say notorious ones out there that has basically caused a lot of issues for gamers and for even developers themselves. So I guess the answer right now is clear. Ubisoft is seeing itself go through, a very interesting internal process. The games that they're making, gamers have actually associated these consultancy firms with their creative decisions. Even when their CEO is trying to come out and temper things and say, in order to address the polarized conversation, around our games, our agenda is not to, our goal is not to push any agenda and all that stuff. It doesn't seem like, you can actually put the genie back in the bottle anymore because everything is now laid out bare. I mean, think about this. Imagine you, the CEO of a company, saying, finally, let me address some of the polarized comments around Ubisoft lately. I want to reaffirm that we are an entertainment-first company creating games for broadest possible audience, and our goal is not to push any specific agenda, while at the same time, somebody from a consultancy firm that is known to be associated with a lot of big names and big development companies is saying that their goal is to burn down the industry. They're basically outwardly stating their agenda, and some of their staff and their employees are stating things that they're trying to get other gamers deplatformed, get other gamers in trouble, in hot water. So already their agenda is being stated. And even though Ubisoft can, in all manner of way, legally kind of dance around the fact that they're not, in a sense, affiliated with these companies, they still have enabled them. They've put them in a position where, they can actually make these statements. They've put their names on credits. They've taken, consultancy advices from them. They've given them money and, basically paid them for services rendered. And so, yeah, it's very hard for you to put that genie back in the bottle, seeing the way that these folk are behaving. So again, right now, it's a very interesting time. And I think the very best, direction that they can go is to immediately take the approach of saying, if this is the problem that gamers have, because gamers are the ones that actually pay the fees, they're the ones that actually buy the games, then we need to ensure that this is not something that gamers have to deal with. And now, at the end of the day, people are playing games to watch credits to ensure that they do not buy your product if your product has any of this stuff. It's become really, really personal for a lot of these gamers and for a lot of the people who felt like they were attacked personally by these so-called consultancy firm employees. So again, I think it's just all over everything. It's just a really strange look when it's all said and done. But I think it's something that was probably necessary in the gaming industry for everybody to step back and say, okay, what are we approaching, gaming, with? I mean, how are we looking at gaming? Are we looking at gaming from the perspective of, oh, we want to go ahead and, serve the gamer? Or are we looking at gaming right now as a thing where, at the end of the day, you're thinking of gaming from the perspective of, oh, our creatives are at the forefront, but then ignoring the customers at the end of the day. So the customer is now showing their power, and that's what's going on in the gaming industry. The ones who had the true power are now showing their power. And I think the power dynamic is shifting because at the end of the day, the power dynamic has always been money. For the consultancy firms, I know maybe some of the people who work there may be ideologues, but at the end of the day, your ideology has always relied on the fact that you could actually make money, from these gaming companies. And without any money, you start, freaking out and panicking because, you kind of do need the dough. I mean, without the dough, your ideology can't ideology, you really need to put it, put some money behind that ideology. And so now you're seeing that the source of the money, whom you have, disdain for, is now looking and saying, well, since you have disdain for me, I'm not going to give money to anywhere that would, indirectly profit you. Not only that, once they start seeing that you have become a liability, because that's what has happened. The gamers have now changed your standing from, consultancy firm to liability. It's now going to be much more difficult. And, I'm not thinking this is going to end very simply. This is going to go down, with a lot of fighting and with a lot of kicking and screaming from all sides. It's going to be interesting. But here's the thing. From the East, they're making a lot of video games. Games are coming from the East. They're flooding in. And anybody who understands and is seeing how the East is basically capturing Western audiences already knows that the reason the East is capturing the Western audiences is simply because they don't have any time for that, and they have a focus on gamers. Now, some Western developers are also taking some steps too to ensure that gamers don't, sense that these antagonists are, are coming against them or are associated with their games. So that also is as a plus at the end of the day. But anyways, I just thought I'd go ahead and highlight this because it's very interesting right now to see the industry changing. And anyone who's paying attention already knows how this is all going to play out at the end of the day. I think the gamers are going to have their say. They almost always do in situations like this. Because why? They're the bosses. The execs know this, but, for the most part, they've actually tried to ignore it because there was a big war chest. There was investor funding. Everybody was being, all acting up like, oh yeah, we're here to, follow and pursue these particular issues instead of actually focus on making games. But now that, the investments are starting to get expensive with no return, everyone is thinking to look and say, maybe this is maybe we need to take a different approach. And a different approach they will. The gamer is at the core of their business. And so they realize, man, if we don't take a different approach, we are out of business. They're not too big to fail. Watch and see. Thanks for watching. Peace out.